Okay, when you meet with a real estate agent, one of the first things that they do is they give you this disclosure called a brokerage relationship disclosure. It might have a different name in different states, but that's what we call it around here. And what it does is it describes the duties that a real estate agent is owed to you. Before you sign a contract with a real estate agent, they have to obey the law and they have certain obligations. But once you sign a contract with a real estate agent, you become their fiduciary, and that means that there are certain duties that you owe that client. It's basically the difference between a customer, being a customer, and a client relationship. So we're seeing, I'm actually getting a lot of calls about issues dealing with this, people who have been in situations recently or people that are finding themselves in situations. So a fiduciary, when you are a fiduciary, it means that you have to put the person's best interests ahead of your own. So that's the main part of it that is difficult in difficult real estate markets for some agents. So you put your client's best interests ahead of your own. It's very similar to an attorney-client relationship. An attorney is also a fiduciary. So fiduciaries owe the duties of care, loyalty, good faith, confidentiality, and disclosure. I think in real estate we call it reasonable care. But yeah, the confidentiality being the most important part. So how could an agent breach fiduciary duty in a real estate transaction? Because this can happen, and as a client, it's important to just make sure that your best interests are being looked out for. So here are some ways. An agent receives secret profits or fees that were not disclosed to the client. An agent fails to inform the seller of other offers on the table after an offer has been accepted. Did you know that even if you have an accepted offer, even if your house is closing tomorrow and you get another offer on it, it has to be presented to you? Fun fact. As a fiduciary, if I, as a listing agent, if I know anything about the buyers, I have to tell my client about it. So let's say I happen to show these buyers a couple of other houses and they told me they just inherited $500,000 and they're willing to spend anything on this house. My obligation is to tell that to my client as their fiduciary. A way fiduciaries breach contracts, agent fails to advise a buyer of material defects to a property. So if an agent can see that they think there's been a roof leak, they have to tell their buyer that. Dual representation, that is a rough one. So dual representation is when your client is the seller and your client is also the buyer, and that can get really sticky. And I think that's where we find most of these issues come into play. That's where I'm seeing people complaining about that. There are ways to handle a situation like that without representing both parties, so you can remain a fiduciary to just one party and really represent them to the best of your ability. If the agent provides a client's personal information to another broker without client permission, so if I, as a listing agent, provide some kind of confidential information about my client to the other agent, that's breaching fiduciary duty. And then if a agent accepts or declines an offer without speaking to their client, that is also a breach of fiduciary duty. So kind of boring stuff in real estate, but it's stuff that we're seeing a lot because it's a tough market, and agents who are not very busy, who are relying on those, living paycheck to paycheck. I have a lot of empathy for those agents. They sometimes can get themselves into some hot water. So as a client, it's just important to be really aware and make sure that you're cognizant of these duties. If you've got any questions, if you think that we would be a great match to work together, please feel free to reach out to me. I am available. Have a great day.